Hello, this is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is July 1st, 2024. Welcome to the show. Today, I want to talk about U.S. government policy on elections, and specifically, I want to talk about the presidential debate that they had last week. So, I want to start with something that you probably already know, but just to remind you about elections and our government policy on it. The person having the greatest number of votes shall be president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of the electors appointed, basically meaning they get past the threshold that we hear people talking about on election night. And if there be more than one who have a majority, and have an equal number of votes, then the House of Representatives shall immediately choose the ballot one of them for president. Meaning, if there's a tie, then it goes to the House of Representatives. Why I said that will come up a little bit later. The presidential debate, I want to talk about it. Here's what I want to talk about. Why did the Democrats let President Biden debate? Did Biden answer any questions about tax cuts and immigration? Did Trump answer the same questions? What about the name calling? What are the Democrats really doing? What about Harris? Like I said, the first one is, why did the Democrats let President Biden debate? Now, you can watch the other mainstream medias for the answers to some of the other obvious questions. I picked stuff that no one in the media has actually talked about and that I think is important. So that's why I chose these. So first one, like I said, why did they let President Biden debate? It made absolutely no sense to me why he was up there. Why? Because he was in Camp David and it was reported on all of the news agencies practicing. Wouldn't they have seen that he was getting confused, that he was hoarse and raspy? Why would the Democrats let Biden get up on stage and do the same thing? They would have known. What are they up to? Did Biden answer any questions about tax cuts and immigration? He absolutely did not. And as a matter of fact, that's when he seemed to be the most confused. I watched the debates and I wanted to hear his answer on why our country is letting illegal immigrants into the country. It made absolutely no sense what he was saying. Sorry if you're a fan of his, but it didn't. What about the tax cuts? Well, he wants to, for anyone making over $400,000, and I would have to look up what the married rate is, he wants them taxed more. And that's no surprise that that's what they're still doing. So I want to be equal on this and do the same for President Trump. Why did the Republicans let Donald Trump debate? Well, they kind of know what they're going to get when he's up there on stage. And he had a better presence, although he was short on details of what he wanted to do. And when we get to tax cuts and immigration, he said on tax cuts that they want to extend the tax cuts that he put in place 2017. What about immigration? Well, That is his strongest policy. However, he was weak on details as well, and he could have used his time better to do that. Now, before I go on to the next one, I want to point something out. When I'm doing the U.S. government policy on elections, I'll read you some of the policies on elections because I did that last time too. Presidential debates are not mandatory. I'll say it again. Presidential debates are not mandatory. So the candidates don't have to debate whatsoever. And the rules are broad, big level. They apply to the states. They apply to how they choose electors. No presidential debates. What about the name calling? That would be the other thing from the presidential debate. It's interesting to me that they hold Trump to a standard of not talking about what's going on with him and also some of the comments that aren't liked out there. But President Biden called him a felon on national TV. Now, whether it's true or not, is that appropriate for a presidential debate? What about the policies? They spent a little bit too much time with personal attacks, and Biden started that. He started the personal attack, and the policies with details, we never got any of that. But there's no rules. So they could have put on boxing gloves and started boxing as far as any rules went. The main thrust of the presidential debate is getting your policies and ideas out there. But like I said, there's no rules on it. They don't have to exclusively do that. What are the Democrats really doing? Over the last several weeks before the debate, President Biden was prepping for it. And we know what our eyes showed us that he seemed confused. You could barely understand him. And like I said in the beginning, the Democrats knew that. Why put him up there? And if you look at media before, the big question is he competent? Now, I think that the party and the voters have to decide that. But with that knowledge, they still let him debate, meaning President Biden. And on top of that, they prepped him. So why would they hear that in prep and say, okay, well, we want you to go out there and do this anyway? So that's what I'm saying. What are the Democrats up to? What about Harris? So, in case you didn't know, because they gloss over this in the news medias and even in print, President Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee. And when people are printing possible scenarios that could happen, none of that is true. Why? Because once the person is the nominee, the only way that you can replace them is if they resign. And it doesn't look like that President Biden is going to resign. Now, you've got legal scholars and presidential scholars talking about Harris. Well, what about Harris? Why is it that she's not the natural choice to not only become president, and she would if something happened to President Biden, but what if he would resign before the convention? And maybe they're waiting for the convention and them to be officially nominated before Biden would resign. Then, if that's the case, why are the progressive media outlets talking about possible replacements for the president if he would bow out or resign? Wouldn't Vice President Harris be the logical choice? So why did they send him to the debate when it's not required by the Constitution? It's not required by anything. If they had knowledge, what are the Democrats up to? And why isn't Harris their first choice? There shouldn't be any discussion of anybody else. Now, let me balance this some because I've just been talking about President Biden, and I just see that as the biggest problem because do they want this guy to win? Now, let's look at Trump. We can't say the same about Trump. With Trump, you know what you're getting. You also know that what his policies are, what he's focused on. He's focused on the tax cuts and immigration. So there is a clear picture from the Republican Party to what they want, what they expect, etc. It's just weird this time around with the Democrats, and the mainstream medias should be talking about what I was just talking about with why was he debating, and why is it that Vice President Harris isn't the natural choice for being the nominee if something would happen to President Biden. This is George. Just listen. Let me know what you think.